kids who actually ran away from home. Why did you do it? And how far did you get? I left home at 16. I'm 30 now. I'm not doing great, especially financially, but compared to the conditions back then at home, at least I'm safe, and that's huge for me. If I could have done anything differently, I would have gone to see a trauma therapist much sooner. I'm in therapy now, and I think I have better times to look forward to. When I was 16, I packed my bags and left my home. My father would always treat me badly, and after one night, where the police got involved and banned my father from coming home for 10 days, I took the opportunity and left. I went to Child Protective Services, I think that's what it's called in English, and they let me stay at a girl home where I shared a room with girls in similar situations. After a week of staying there, I was taken in by a foster family with whom I lived until I was 18. My parents were informed of where I was after I had already moved in with my foster family, so I don't know if it counts as running away, although they never found out the exact address because of safety measures. I'm from Ohio, and one day in late August at age 15 I got in my car, which I bought with money saved from a part-time job at a grocery store. No license, no more than $100, and nowhere to go. I just left. I wasn't currently abused, and I have a mom and stepdad I love dearly, but they didn't understand me. I did, however, have a horrible relationship with my father from age 7 to 9, when I got my first period, and I was never normal after that, but that's a different story. The day I left, I got in a small argument with my stepdad, and when I left I told him I was never coming back. Anyway, I drove about an hour from my home, and 30 minutes from my school, and ended up in a park. It was a hippie kind of park, sort of attached to Nelson Ledges, a place where I used to do some crazy gigolo thing at the time. The nice old man that ran the park let me camp there in my car. I turned 16 shortly after and got a decent job as a prep cook and made enough money to get an apartment in a not so nice part of town, closer to my school. And you know, with running water, it was above meth lab, so eventually I started getting really sick. I would spend most my day at school in the nurse's office. Eventually, after talking with the school nurse, a very understanding younger lady, she agreed to help me get things in order. She helped me get as emancipated as you can in Ohio, helped me get on a school food program, and would listen to me when I become very overwhelmed. Eventually it was winter, and I left the meth lab apartment, sleeping in my car once again. I was dumb and got a dog while I had a place of my own. But she was the most perfect dog ever, and we become roommates in my car. As an adult, I now know you shouldn't just leave your 1996 Chevy Cavalier just running all the time. Apparently you'll die, and so will the car. So a full winter of sleeping in Walmart parking lots, and parked on the side of the road with just my dog and a bunch of blankets, gave me enough time to get my money in order to live at a better shitty apartment. It was hard being under 18 with a dog and no current residence to rent an apartment. I moved maybe 9 times before I was 18. I don't ever regret leaving. I know I put myself in some bad situations considering I was a girl, alone, and vulnerable most of the time. I called my mom about once a week after the initial first 2 weeks, and now we have a great relationship. I think me leaving let my mom and stepdad live the lives they wanted. I always got in the way, and I got to live the life I wanted. I'm now 24, still have my first dog and 3 rescues. I have a good job, own my own house, so I'll never have to live in my car again. I'm currently on break at work on my mobile, so sorry about everything being unorganized and written poorly. I ran away a few times, but the last time was when I turned 17. Crashed here and there, some friends, family, and a few nights on the street. Stuff went downhill quickly, but after my father committed suicide, I used all those emotions and energy to pull myself up. Started small with a job here and there, until I could rent my own place. Shortly after it went downhill again for a bit, but not too long, after I got a lucky break, and fell into a job I loved. A drunken friend of my nephew went out drinking. I'm 35 now, and life still goes up and down, but I've never reached the lows I was at when I was pre-20. Still feel like it's the best decision of my life though. Got in a fight with my mom over college applications. I messed up and didn't send some stuff in time for early action, and she got really upset because it looked like I didn't care about my future. Things got heated and a bit physical, so I walked out the front door without shoes. It was probably late October or early November, and it was a cold and miserable night. Made it 5 miles before my dad, who was out of town, ended up calling me. Apparently my mom called him in a panic about what happened. I told him what happened and where I was, and eventually my mom came by to pick me up. Asphalt doesn't feel that great on bare feet. Who would have thought? Not me, but my dad's husband abandoned his family and lived on the streets of Bangkok when he was 14. I don't know the full extent of it because he doesn't talk about it, but his extended family had issues with him because his mother was Chinese and the rest of the family was Thai. They were morally opposed to that, so they forced him away from his own parents to live with his father's mother, whom he hated. He was put on the bus to move to his grandmother's, but jumped off somewhere in the middle and hoped for the best. After surviving homeless for a few years, he managed to get a restaurant job through a friend of his. He got an apartment and a motorcycle and life was pretty sweet. In his late 30s he decided to move to the US to join a few of his friends who had moved here and were doing well for themselves also in the restaurant industry. Not long after moving here he met my father who was dating a friend of his at the time. They pretty much immediately hit it off, and after my dad broke up with the other guy, thank God, they got together and moved in with each other. Just a couple of years ago, they got married. My dad makes enough for the both of them, so he's free to live a very liberated life. At some point, sorry, I don't know the specifics, he reconnected with his family. It was really his grandfather who drove the wedge between everyone, and once he passed, the enmity did as well. He's an awesome guy, and I'm really happy to have him be a part of my family. I don't think he has a cruel bone in his body and I've never seen my dad so at peace. My mom went to prison, my father was already out of the picture and my stepfather on some subconscious level resented us. If he hadn't taken us, we would have gone back to foster care. A little while later he started dating a new woman and she couldn't comprehend why she had to deal with kids that weren't hers and weren't his. She was terrible to us, and I left before there was another chance to have another parent figure abandon me. It was probably the best and worst decision I've ever made in my life. Eventually things panned out, and I got my shit together. I had a friend do this at 15. He vanished one day without a trace and the police never found him. I've heard different stories from people about him. Supposedly his parents treated him horrible, and he didn't think the police would help so he left. Another that he was lured away by some trashy older woman who convinced him she loved him. One story that made some sense was he was gay and scared if his parents found out they'd kill him, so before they found proof he stole some money and hit the road. What really happened? No one knows for sure, but that was almost 25 years ago, and he's made contact with people since vanishing. Supposedly he's okay now, but his parents died before they ever found out what happened. My sister took off at age 16 and moved into a 6-foot X9 trailer that could be towed behind a car at a trailer park about a mile from our house. She got a job at McDonald's, one of the ones that was owned by the corporation, not a franchise, and paid her rent from her job. She kept going to high school for a while, but dropped out. She moved up a bit in the corporation and got her JED along the way, then went to a community college and transferred to a university over the course of a decade while working in full-time jobs. Got her degree and then took more professional jobs. She got laid off and found it harder to get rehired after the dot-com bust in 2001. So she became a real estate agent, then a broker, so she could work for herself. She's done really well and just bought the office building she works out of. She told me a good year is $250k. Never married, no kids, always supported herself. I think my dad came back into her life and paid for some of her tuition in community college and her university, but we were white trash so it probably wasn't much, and that's all the help she ever had. She never really had problems with running off and dropping out, just worked hard her whole life. I was in 5th grade. I felt stressed out at home by my parents. I just felt tired of everything at home and needed a break. So when I got off the school bus, I decided to play with my friends instead of going home. We played till 7 then everyone left. I didn't feel like going home all of a sudden. Luckily I found a way to improvise. I'd received food in school as part of a school thing where they gave away food for people who signed up, those who were poorer. I'd also found a skateboard in the grass near the playground. Finally, in the apartment building I used to live in, there was a laundry room all the way downstairs. My plan went into effect at about 9 PM. I ate all my crackers from the food pack. Then I walked around the neighborhood in search of a place to sleep. I tried an old playground, but there were a bunch of black cats nearby, and it was in public, so I got scared that I'd get kidnapped. I considered going to a friend's house, then I remembered that I'm in 5th grade and that their parents would most likely call the police. I kept walking around, but I noticed someone following me. I started running towards an apartment building so they'd think I was going home. I went all the way downstairs and decided that was a good enough spot to set base. I put down my skateboard, put a soft jacket on it as a pillow, and used my other jacket as a cover. Apart from a few spiders creeping up on me, I slept pretty well. I woke up, and on my way to the school bus, my grandma just walked up to me, grabbed my arm, and took me home. Needless to say, I was scared and freaked out. The police officers got my info, gave me a quick talk, and went home. I was scared because I knew that my whole family would ask me questions, and they did. They asked me why I did it, and I answered by telling them that I stayed out late to play with my friends, and I was scared to come home because I was late. I've done many odd childish things and my mom keeps telling my relatives about it. I'm mostly shy around them now. I left this question open on a tab and struggled. Should I answer? I have now. I started actively leaving when I was 11. Most of my life my mother made excuses to put me elsewhere, as long as no one asked questions. I suppose it was her best effort to protect me. There was so much pain at home. I curled up in the woods, and I walked the streets. I trusted strangers and family, and was sheltered over the years. Despite committing no crime, I was part of the juvenile justice system. I was given away sometimes to places that weren't much better than my parents' home. I never wanted to go back. I ran from some of those places too. I was only 15 when I threw myself into the arms of someone who was almost 4 years older than I was, while living here and there. At 16 I was married, and at 17 I was a mother. I was a lousy mother, but I tried. They all still speak to me, and my door is always open. I'm lucky to know my grandchildren. I'm 55 now, and I started leaving at 11. My heart swells when I read some of these posts. Kids should have a safe home. All kids. All people. I might be in the forever fucked up category, but I try to be better. I'm lucky to have children who are much better people than I am, and who have allowed me to be part of their lives. All 3 have children themselves, and my grandchildren are an active part of my life. My dad didn't exactly run away, but was abandoned by his father, and his mother was mentally ill. He was on his own at 11. His half-brother eventually gave him a room and a job, and occasionally his mother would be out of the asylum and take care of him, and then back in again. His mother's family would give him dinners once a week, Sunday, and he got through high school, then college, and met my mom. Married her, continued through university and having kids, went into the army, drafted or just before being drafted, go PhD, etc. His mother's family expected him to end up in jail, so pretty much abandoned him until he made it to high school. I was about 9 when I ran away because I got tired of my parents fighting, so I decided to run away. I ran away at least 10 miles away, and people were just staring at me the whole time. I saw cops were driving in the streets, so I ran behind a store, and then I got scared, so I went back. There were cops at my house and my family was there, all sad. I'm just gonna say that I wanted to kill myself so many times when I was about 7 to 10. Since dad always got drunk and mom got very mad, and it happened every day. At one point I attacked my dad with a pan. I was just smacking him with the pan. After that my parents still fought for years. Until I was 13 the problem got resolved. There were so many fights from the day I was born. I say 4 fights every week, and it sucks coming from school parties wondering if today my parents are gonna fight. I left at 16 from a mix of stepmom abuse and being trans and afraid to come out in the 90s. I had been working since 15 and had already bought my own beta car, so I just stopped coming home, ever. I still went to school and work, and my stepmom called the police. The officer told her that they could drag me back, but if I was working and going to school now, he didn't think the situation would get better forcing me back, and with a car in my name they couldn't legally take it from me, or something like that. It's been 20 plus years. Shout out to that cop. My dad convinced my stepmom the cop was right, and they left me alone to finish high school and move away. I was 10 years old, got super pissed that my mom would not let me spend the night at my friend's house because it was a school night. I told her I hate you, I'm running away. I packed my shit. I took socks, Gamma Boy, and some other important toys. I left the house and got to the end of the street and sat on the corner crying. A strange car stopped at the stop sign I was sitting by. Inside there was a middle-aged woman. She looked at me, saw that I was crying, and told me to go home. So I did. Gave my mom a hug when I got back. I wasn't abused or anything. I just didn't enjoy getting in trouble and didn't like my family. Sometimes I would think about it, but all I ever did was stand right outside my gate before coming back in. Then when I was 12 I read the Warrior Cat books. I thought I was the human version of that, and I was supposed to live in the world with a tribe of other people. I was on holidays, and whenever my parents left me alone, I'd walk at most 2 feet into the bush before thinking that maybe the neighbors are watching me confused, so I pretended that I lost my ball in the bush. The most I walked in the forest was about 1 meter before returning back to my house. Later that year, I thought me and all my friends were secretly going to become dragons and save the world by embarking on a quest. I prepared it all, like how we were going to need food and stuff. So one time I came to school with 10 sandwiches in my lunchbox and my friends were confused. I was too shy to convince any of them to do anything with me. Thank goodness. Yeah, come to think of it, I was kind of crazy at age 12. If you're thinking about it, don't run away for dumb reasons like these. There are no tribes in the east coast of Australia, and you're not going to be a dragon.